Good morning, people. Busy weekend down here on the river, as is obviously the case. Even my neighbors here are busy building their springtime nests and lodges. It's always kind of fun to see these guys go by. I love them. Um, anyway, I had an interesting conversation last night with T-Dog, a frequent responder around here, if you've not noticed. And we had an interesting and very thoughtful conversation a couple hours here last night. Um, Talking about this Dialogos stuff and the I thou relating and how transformative, in fact, um, he's found thinking about it. And that always makes me happy because it's been transformative for me too. And it's been a long path to that perspective opening up and becoming conscious for me. And I enjoy sharing it. But he made a comment, and it's interesting to me because it's a comment that I hear not infrequently. In fact, I heard it from Adrienne not that long ago either, talking about these issues, and it's like, oh, this stuff really resonates with me, but I'm really no greenie. I'm no kind of environmentalist. And that always makes me kind of inwardly smile because in a lot of ways I would say the same thing. But I would probably say that more accurately and more nuanced a manner, which is like, I am not a greenie nor an environmentalist like those people. I can relate to that. Um, More on that in a moment. But let me just be completely clear about something here. If you start walking this path of trying to have an intimate first person relationship with life, you're going to end up being a greenie. You're going to. It is inevitable. It's part of it, and it will become one of those things as a very cherished aspect of it. The path to it is natural and necessary. There is no other way, and it's worth considering why that is a inevitability. So let's just ask a very, very practical question here, okay? Let's say that you are interested in forming what I like to call a dialogue with life and your experience of living, and to feel that you are confident that you have an accurate model of reality. Okay? Let's say you want to do that. Where do you go? Where do you go to try to do that? Now, your choices are the same that they've always been throughout human history. Your your choices are to go to the natural world and try to source for yourself an understanding of various relationships, dynamics, mechanisms, and such that exist in that system, and to experience those things firsthand for yourself and to try to develop an understanding of reality from that firsthand experience. That's one. The second path, which is related to the first, is to try to further understand symmetries and mechanisms and correlations between things that superficially appear unlike through the use of mathematics, perhaps geometry, perhaps music, and formal logic. Okay, that's choice two, but choice two isn't super useful unless you've got a firm grip on choice one. So they're often joined at the hip. And choice three is to read meta-analysis of someone else's experience, either reading more meta-analysis or making a claim that they've had firsthand experiences and their models are important and they are sharing their information and their way of looking at the world with you for your benefit. Okay? And I'm not here in any way going to completely poo-poo meta-analysis, because there is valuable meta-analysis out there. But meta-analysis, it should be understood, cannot nor ever will be a substitute for first-hand personal experience and knowledge of the real. Good meta-analysis may provide you with insights and tools about how to go get your first-hand experience. But telling you what your first-hand experience is always poor mentorship. Again, it can never ever be a substitute for first-hand experience of the real if you seek it. It can only be a surrogate. And there's a huge difference between the two. Now, there's another curious aspect to meta-analysis here that is not immediately apparent to us, and it's something that we should pay some attention to, and that is this. Very often for individuals that feel that they have a need to pursue this path of the life dialogue, they have a tendency to start to gravitate towards philosophical or metaphysical musings of antiquity. All right. There's a bias for us to do that, believing in some way that ancient perspectives are less tainted, let's say, somehow more pure and accurate. And that's both true and untrue, okay? I think we can understand that, let's say you were a earnest philosophical thinker 3,000 years ago, and you were to set out on this path towards formulating a dialogue with life that was personal for you, you would have the advantage of living in a culture that was just simply inherently less estranged from the natural world when you started. Your knowledge of how life operates was likely far more advanced than it would be for a modern person that lives in a technological society where the essential mechanisms of the natural world are pretty distant. So that those people would have a leg up in forming that relationship because they just weren't that far away from it when they started. Okay? However, they also were not in possession of the tools that we are today, which allow us, if we are thoughtful, to interface and understand the relationship with the natural world and its systems. These tools allow us to interface with that, if we use them appropriately, to observe relations there that are far more subtle, and we can see them in much greater detail and understand them far more completely than would be possible for the ancients. Okay? So it's useful, without a doubt, to read the traveler's tales of individuals who set out on the path of understanding the world they lived in and forming this interpersonal dialogue with life and seeing what they learned. You know, both the ancients and the modern examples of individuals that also did so, because there's value there too. It's just important to understand that if we're going to look at meta-analysis, again, it's useful to focus on the individuals who knew the task that they were undertaking. It wasn't just a matter of pure abstraction. It wasn't just purely a quest for knowledge. It was a seeking of gnosis, in fact, to use the ancient terminology, to have this relationship. And there's an incredible gulf between individuals who take on their co-relating with life uh, in the manner of seeking connection and gnosis, and those who are doing it for reasons that are more distant and abstract. And so I promise you, if you take this on and you start to do it, and you do it with the earnest intent of interfacing with life because it has something to teach you, it's a process of elevating your consciousness and elevating the consciousness of others, of these inherent mechanisms, structures, relations. If you get into that, you're going to form a relationship with the natural world that is visceral. And at this moment, you may not have that, but you know what it's like to have a visceral relationship with things, because they do still exist in the modern society we have. I mean, certainly you will come to have great reverence once you finally are able to lose our civilizational myopic biases and understand that the natural world is precisely that gives you life. And when you finally are able to have the maturity to draw that connection, then when you see a clear cut on a mountainside, or, you know, whale chase boats chasing whales around needlessly, and the kind of garbage that you see just perpetually, you will have the same kind of feeling that you would if, for example, you went to the bank and found that your bank account was emptied out by some clown. Because it's the same kind of loss. It's just that in our modern world, the kinds of things that we have relationships with are largely abstractions. The things that provide us life are largely abstractions, like our bank account. When our bank account goes away, we feel a tremendous sense of loss. Eventually, once you form a connection to that which actually does, in fact, objectively provide life for you, and it is the source of your being, when you see it degraded or stolen from you, will have the same kind of visceral feeling that you might now find isolated in funny things like bank accounts. It'll happen, I promise you. And you will start to call yourself a greenie. And you shouldn't be embarrassed of that label. In fact, I would fly that freak flag pretty conspicuously, because it's valuable for people to see individuals who can bear witness to a practical, meaningful, authentic first-person relationship with life in the natural world, rather than many people that you meet who call themselves often quite vocally environmentalists, whose posture is pretty inauthentic and much more a matter of fashion statement and virtue signaling, conspicuously different to anyone who observes it. I mean, I had a conversation not that long ago. I mean, very brief. I've gotten over the need to actually even try to talk to these people, but I was on a forum discussing, climate change and such, and on comes a very affluent woman, obviously thinks she's an expert about climate change. She's pining about how she's been an advocate for changing how we do things in the world for like 50 years, and how she's been ignored and blown off for 50 years. And now she's very concerned about how her 6 grandchildren are going to possibly have a survivable life, and she's grieving about this. Well, it's my experience generally that individuals that claim expertise in some kind of meta-analysis and claim to have some kind of knowledge about something, particularly an existential threat, and their lifestyles in no way whatsoever resemble what you'd expect if a person had a first person, innate, authentic connection with that reality. And if you live just totally differently, like it didn't matter at all, in spite of what came out of your mouth, um, well, I would expect that most people would blow you off. And there are a lot of people like that that identify themselves as greenies and ecologists, and it's important to understand that that's not what I'm getting at here. Um, there is only one path as far as I can see it. If we are going to be co-participants in the opportunity offered to us by this creative process we call life, and that is to do it first person and for real. And that's going to require compromises. And people that have that relationship with life and reality will discover the same things that they always have if they try to do so. The lessons and the messages that you're going to get if you go out and try to have a dialogue with life are exactly the same that they were for Pythagoras or Trismegistus or Isaac Newton or Niels Bohr or Bertrand Russell or Buckminster Fuller, because you're going to the same source and the information that you're going to get from it is going to be the same. It may have your own personal spin, but just like it would be in any kind of relationship that you form for real authentically, it's firsthand, first person, and real. So that's where you're going to end up if you start walking this path. Super precious stuff, people. I would recommend you do it. Anyway, again, it was nice talking to T-Dog the other night. It's something that I haven't done in a long time. I used to kind of be involved more in the live chat kind of thing. Gotten away from it after the hacking and all the rest. If there's interest in that, I mean, it wouldn't take me too much to set up a little server where we, our little tiny posse here, could have that conversation together, because I'm sure many of you would like to have this conversation amongst yourself and perhaps with me on occasion, and that wouldn't be too hard to do. And if that is interesting to you, maybe I'll set that up. But anyway, I've got tons of projects to get done here and make like beaver. So I'm going to get back at it, but I hope the little conversation today is useful to you and is helpful in your pursuit of the real. So cheers, people. Have a good day.